to start the discussion, when you place a baby on their tummy, and they're saying now that when you start placing babies, kind of on they need 3 hours of tummy time a day. Doesn't have to be all together, but they need 3 hours a day in order to have normal brain development. And the reason is because when they're laying there, right, and they can't barely lift their head yet, right, they do this. And then pretty soon they're like reaching for stuff, right? And then pretty soon they're like moving, and I moved, and they're all excited about that. The brain starts recording all of that stuff, right? When their posture is in that position, their brain is actually dumping chemicals that tell the brain to heal, to write new pathways, to be plastic, to be regenerative, and to be young, okay? And they develop quickly because of that ability to get into that posture. And that's why if you don't do it, if you always put the baby on their back, they literally will miss developmental phases, okay? So, it poses lots of questions. There's a bigger discussion, but I'm gonna give you the shorter discussion, okay? But basically, over time, the question has become, do humans, like adults with brain injuries, let's say, in order to get the brain injury to heal, they discovered in the 1960s, so that's 60 years ago, right? They discovered that if you had them lay on their belly and do tummy time, and then start army crawling, and then start crawling, and then start creeping, that if you took them through those phases, their brain would develop, and they would heal. And if you didn't, they would always have gaps. And they thought, well, maybe there's something magic in the human nervous system of going through these phases. And only about 20 years ago, people started asking the question, is it that? Or is it just the position of the brainstem and the brain in space that causes it? And of course, that's easy to test, right? Found out it's just the position, or at least it's mostly the position. And so this is now a brain-based practice. From now on, we are focusing on the brain. If you have troubles with autonomic dysregulation, any kind of stubborn problem that will not go away, you're getting a brain lecture, because the brain is where it's at, okay? So here's what we found. If you put the body in the correct posture, that brain will just start dumping those same chemicals. The chiropractors who are practicing it, which we had 5 of them speak to us over last week, okay? 2 of them are practicing just how I want to practice. One of them, I'm going to take his classes. But all of them start with and say that the most important thing is what I'm telling you right now, okay? It is 90%, well, let's say 80% of the benefit comes from just what I'm going to show you today, okay? And so they will do chiropractic to help balance the brain hemispheres and to remove obstruction from being able to get into the correct posture. And then they have you do homework, okay? So here's how it works. We're going to combine the posture with an activity with your eyes that forces your brain to switch back on controls and pathways that have just collapsed as you've aged, okay? So here's how we do it. Ready? Here's my relaxed posture. I'm gonna do no, and I would prefer you would say these exact words to yourself, okay? Because the imagery helps you do it right, okay? So nose above water, open my heart. Now let's talk about the open the heart thing. Most people can get the nose above water, okay? Opening the heart, everybody does it wrong. So let's see if we can help you, okay? So I'm going to nose above water. The opening the heart part is 3 things, right? I'm gonna elongate my neck, ready? Did you see it? I'm gonna bring my shoulders back just slightly. Notice it's my shoulders, not my arms. People do this. That's a sign that their brain is in degenerative state. A neurodegenerative brain doesn't know how to open the heart, and honestly, all the emotional load that is stored here, they don't want to expose it. So they stay covered, right? And so they do stuff like this instead of actually opening the heart. So it's the neck elongates, shoulders go back a little, and then you contract the muscles in back to bring your sternum toward the sky. Now, in order to prove to you that I'm not using my breath, I'm going to breathe all the way out, and then I'm going to do it. Did you see? It was not my breath that raised my chest. It was my back muscles. The same as the baby. That baby laying on the floor is not using his forced breathers to get his head off the floor. He's using his back muscles, okay? If I use my forced breathers, guess what forced breathers are associated with in my brain? Working hard, right? Do you think that's a neuroplastic state? Of course not. That's a locked down state. That's a dealing with stress state. We want to be in a neuroplastic state. So we're not going to use forced breathers. We're going to use our back muscles, just like the baby does, okay? So nose above water, open my heart. So this elongates, my shoulders go back a little, and my chest goes up a little. Now, standing right here, right now, I've only been here for seconds. My brain is starting to dump those chemicals, okay? And I'm going to combine this with an exercise that will cause your eye, we will use your eyes to force your brain to turn back on the control pathways, which will stop like arthritis. Arthritis is a product of your brain not being able to control position anymore. 80% of your brain's activity is about control. 20% is movement. 80% is control. The control pathways fail, and then joints just kind of slide into the lowest common denominator. They just slide into this lowest functioning state, and you walk around that way and they wear out. But if your controls were functioning, your joints would stay in a toned state. They would stay lifted up, and they wouldn't break down, and they might even heal, but they definitely will stop breaking down, okay? So we need those control pathways to work. So here's what we do. You can do it in a room. It's better outside. You do need to be standing, but what you're going to do is get into posture. So elevate, nose above water, open my heart, and now I'm going to use the line between the ceiling and the wall. It has to be above your brow to work. As long as your eyes are below your brow, your brain will stay in this myopic, sort of resting state, maybe stress state, but it won't be healing. So here we are. I'm going to use that line, and first I'm going to move my eyes only along that line. Now, you're going to bless every inch of that line with your focus. Let me say that again. You're going to bless every inch of that line with your focus. What everybody does who's in neurodegeneration, every person in neurodegeneration does the same thing. They go to look at it and their eyes go hop, 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 hop. But you're going to bless every inch, okay? So you have to go slow enough to control the hopping. You'll get faster. In fact, one of the things that will let you know that your brain is in a healing state is that you'll go faster and you won't have skipped anything. And so I'm going to go as far as my eyes will go one way, back to neutral, far as my eyes will go the other way, and back to neutral, going slow the whole time. Then I'm going to use my head, and I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to try to move my head and not my eyes. Okay? Of course, it'd be much slower than this in the beginning, but I'm going to go as far as my head will turn one way, and then back. And of course, it would be slower than this. In the beginning, it would be much slower than this. Right? And then I'm going to go as far as my head will go the other way. And then back. Again, I'm going much faster. I'm not ready to go this fast. Eventually you will be. Eventually you'll be able to do it fast and not lose sight of any inch. That's when you know your brain is healing. Once I've done that, okay, I got back to neutral. I've done my eyes, I've done my head. Now I'm going to relax. That's one. I'm going to do 3 of those 5 times a day. So now I'm ready for number 2. Nose above water, open my heart. Start with my eyes. I'm going to just do it fast, but I would be doing it slow, right? Back to neutral, all the way the other way. Back to neutral, then my head, as far as it'll turn, and then back to neutral, and all as far as it'll turn, and back to neutral. That's 2. 3 of those 5 times a day. In the beginning, that's daunting because each one of those takes like a minute or 2. right? But after 4 or 5 days, you'll find you can do the entire thing in 20 or 30 seconds. After a week or two, you might shave more time off it than that. But this process will absolutely change everything that's going on in your body. It will give you the power too, when you're stressed, to not let that own you. All the evidence we have at the moment. Now, I tell people all the time, we haven't arrived. We're arriving. All the evidence we have at the moment, it's going to change, but all the evidence we have at the moment suggests that everything evil and horrible and bad and terrible that happens to you when you're stressed is actually caused by posture. And that if you didn't do it, if you kept your posture where it should be, none of those things would happen to you. That's what we think. All of the evidence we have suggests it. Because we can get everything to heal just from posture. People that are stuck in depression, trauma, they're actually coming out of it just from doing the exercise. So now, that brings me to the last point. No, I've got 2 points. I might as well put on that recording. One is, if you're trying to get into posture and it makes you feel uncomfortable and you want to, that's emotional. And your job is to open that up, feel it, take your attention there and go, what is there? What is there that makes me not want to come up? When I first started, I found that I had one of those in my back. I'm like, oh, it's always in the way. And so I took my own advice, right? What's there? And it turns out it's my tendency to want to carry the world's burdens. And I do very much. That's a pathological focus for my life, right? And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with wanting to help people and serve people, but this isn't that. This is a kind of pathological, whether you like it or not, whether it's good for you or not, I'm gonna carry your burdens, okay? It's not healthy. And so I got that out where I could see it and acknowledge that's what it was and what it felt like. It was all naked and bare, warts and all. And I'm like, I'm not going to live my life from that emotion anymore. And I let it go. And I actively sort of imagined letting it go, and I felt letting it go. And I felt the discomfort it made in me, because I've been holding on to that my whole life. Mm-hmm. And it's uncomfortable for me to let it go. But now that I did, that pain went away, okay? Now, you also may get a sharp pain somewhere. That would be a chiropractic problem. You'd come and say, look, I've been doing the exercise, and this is really hurting right here, or my gallbladder's inflamed right now. Drain it, move the rib, whatever needed to be done. Adjust you, help you get into that posture. That's my job, is to make sure that you can constantly sustain that. And also my job, and this is the last thing I'm going to tell you, my job is, if you have a hemisphere that's deficit, that doesn't get as much blood or circulation or activity as the other, I'm going to determine that, and my adjustments are going to cater to fixing that, which will involve a sacral adjustment and an upper cervical adjustment. And it may involve a homework, and I'm going to demonstrate the homework. So it so happens that my brain is the deficit on the right side. On the right side. It's easy to see, actually, because what will happen is people will tend to turn that hand in a little bit, right? So, but the way I evaluate it is I look in your mouth with a light, and I have you say, ah, and I watch the soft palate rise. And it should rise nice and evenly. If it goes off to one side, or if just one side rises, then I know you've got a deficit where it's not rising. Right? Anyway, I happen to have a right side deficit, so here's how I correct it. I bring my arms, elbows locked, fingers interlaced, my thumbs up to where I can see them, and I'm going to keep my focus on my thumbs, and I'm going to turn in a circle to the left. If I was left brain deficient, I would turn in a circle to the right. Okay? There you go. And just doing that will make you feel physically better, because that brain starts to wake up. And normally I would do 2 or 3 of them, 2 or 3 circles. Okay. That's all you really need to record. Now you